I'm Gale of Waterdeep. Apologies. Usually better at this.
I'm an actor, writer, podcaster, and yeah, gun for hire, if you will. When you film a casting for a game, it's very specific. You have to stand at a certain way, you have to have the camera a certain height, and it has to be framed in a certain way. And you kind of throw it into the void and just sort of see what happens. And then about 2 or 3 weeks later, they came back and said, yeah, congratulations, you're going to be playing a wizard. And I was like, oh, great, love to play a wizard. Who wouldn't want to play a wizard? And that was my introduction. So it wasn't anything grand. It was very straight down the line. It's everything that came after that gets very interesting. So we started doing the early access and all the early parts of Act 1. We would dip in and out. So you would do 4-hour sessions per time, maybe once or twice a week. Sometimes there'd be a few weeks off if they were writing or they were reimagining. Then record in the booth, you'd be body mapped, and you would perform. It's not something that I had done before, it's not something that I had any experience in, so you try and piece together from what you've learnt from drama school and from other techniques as to how you think this thing may go, how it would begin to form a character. So I started with doing things like mime and mask work, because there is an element of mask work and mime to it, but it's not all of that because it has to be real. It has to have a reality, even though you're animated. So, and you would learn as you went along. Okay, well that's too much for that, so maybe I'll do less of that, more of this, and then you would begin to find an equilibrium, and then you would begin to sort of play around with the character and think, okay, actually, if this was a real acting exercise, I would push this or I would move this, and I would just begin to kind of pull it around and see where the character begins to form itself. So that became a really interesting thing, and that was probably about the first 6 or 7 months of the early access. And then we would step down, and then when we came back again, it was a much more, they'd taken on board a lot more about how you would create your character and how Gale would be. So it was very much an extraordinary simpatico relationship between writers and creators and actors. You begin to hear, you've picked up on the way I say a line or how I would inflect a certain thing, and that was fascinating to see. And so it was a constantly evolving machine over 4 years of recording.
Not bad for a wizard who slept through his Kalashite lessons, eh?
I think they had obviously the story arcs were already there, but then there are nuance, basically character, and that's that beautiful amalgamation between writers being brilliant and hearing the way you say a particular line, or how they might have envisaged a line would be said, and actually, because of the way you're creating it, it's actually said differently, or it's funny, or it's serious. And then once you begin to kind of get those rhythms and how that character begins to form, then the writing begins to inform it. And then suddenly it feels like you're on rails. Like, yes, I know exactly how this line is supposed to be said because it's written that way, because they've taken everything on board and all those nuances. And then it becomes something else. And then you can really begin to explore the darker elements of a character, or the romantic elements, or the fun elements, and all those things really begin to kind of have a cohesive whole, which makes it extremely exciting and very unique to this particular art form. You don't really get, you get rewrites, of course, but not to the scale and level of a game such as this. I heard the other day as well that there is more material in Baldur's Gate than Lord of the Rings. It's twice as long as Lord of the Rings, just the cutscenes. So it gives you an idea of scale of how much they have put into this, that's just the cutscenes, not the scenes you actually even get to see, to create a character that is believable at the end of the day and that people can get behind and root for or loathe, but it has to come from somewhere to create or provoke an emotion. So that I found an absolutely fascinating journey to have. And then because my background isn't gaming, to be able to bring in what I like. So bring in those elements of fantasy and fantasy writers and old radio shows and all sorts of things into this world. So it becomes, in a very digital world, I was hopefully bringing a lot of analog stuff to it, written word and tape and those kind of things. So I think that then gives it a form and a root and a believability that hopefully is kind of beyond the sum of its just component parts, hopefully. He's very bookish, I'm very bookish. He's into magic, I'm into magic. I have grimoires and all sorts of weird stuff. But I didn't really make the connection until afterwards of actually thinking, oh, we are remarkably similar in a lot of ways. And I think it's those subconscious things that obviously have infused into the character, and that sort of love of learning and history and folklore and just the weirder aspects of things that Gale is really into as well, that makes him who he is, and the way he then sees the world and interacts with people becomes very similar. And it's incredibly enriching, because you just think this is great. You have like a pool to draw from that you never really knew was there, or that you thought anybody would find very interesting. You know, the amount of conversations I've had with people in the past were like, oh, let me tell you about this hobgoblin that lives in this wood, and people usually turn off. But now people are like, please tell me about the hobgoblin that lives in the woods. So yeah, it's been revelatory in that sense.
So you made a cow drop out of the sky, which presumably killed it, and yet somehow you found out her name was Stephanie. I think I'll need a drink with the rest of that story.
So with a TV show or a film, these are passive endeavors. You are sitting and you are watching the thing play out in front of you. You have no bearing on what happens to those characters. You may root for them, you may love them, you may have the enormous connection for that particular thing, but inevitably you can't change what happens. That person will die, that person will marry this person, they will go on and do what those characters do. But with this, it is so interactive and it is so immersive that they are right there with you. They can either be you, or you are there with them every step of the way, through thick and thin, through dangers, through all sorts of different realms and situations. And that brings a connection that I have never experienced before, because it is so unique to this particular art form. So that has been extraordinary, and what that brings out for people, what people want to share, which is just very honouring that people want to share these things with you and your character has given them these things. So it's been an extraordinary, and continues to be an extraordinary journey through this game. An MCM at the London Excel was the first time that all 6 Origin characters and Amelia, who was the narrator, were all together in one place. I don't think we had ever been together, all of us, all together at one time. And so I think everyone massively underestimated the sheer scale and fervor that would follow this game. So it was enormous. It was quite breathtaking just what the game had meant to people so quickly, and how the connections they had made to different characters, what different characters represented, what they meant to these people, was breathtaking, genuinely breathtaking. Like, I haven't experienced anything like that before. We said when we were on the stage for our final panel that this is probably what a rock star feels like. Like, it was just extraordinary, the welcome and the energy that you would get from playing these characters. And remember, we had done this for 4 years. This isn't a short thing. This isn't like either recording a song or doing a TV show where you could be doing it for a couple of months and that's it, and then it comes out. This is 4 years of recording to then culminate in this like grand opening, which was more than any of us expected. We assumed that, okay, this is going to be popular. It's Dungeons and Dragons. It's going to have a certain audience, but never to the scale that it's been, which has just been extraordinary.
Some of the finest artists and musicians began their career amidst stale beer and sticky floors.
I would love to do more. Now I've got into it, I mean, it's been an extraordinary baptism to do a game of this scale, first off. I mean, it's ruined me for any other game. Like, the scale and the size of this is something that is very much other. I would imagine, not knowing much about it, I imagine it is very, very different. But now I've got into it, now you begin to understand the form and the artistry. As it is art, it is, I think people look at it wrongly. They kind of look at it, oh, that's just gaming. But the artistry to do it well is, in and of itself, a great art. Like, it's a mixture of so many different things, and over a very long form, like an extremely long amount of time, to keep that character, to keep that intent, and to keep people interested and connected with your character is very, very, very unique. So now I've kind of dipped my toe in, well, immersed myself up to my neck, I should say. I would love to do more. I'd love to see where this journey takes me.
Amazing, thank you.